goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to create something that will.
Welcome to Perspective, a podcast for wedding creators, where we sit down, always with a special guest, and talk about our many years of experience in the wedding industry so you can learn from us and grow your wedding business. Hello, I'm Simon.
And I'm Greg.
Together, we are Cinemate Films, two Scottish-based wedding filmmakers who love nothing more than drinking coffee and talking shop with others in the wedding industry. This episode is, of course, sponsored by Witjack and PickTime, but I'll get onto that later in the show. Gregory.
Yes?
Hello.
Hi.
Are you feeling like death this morning?
I do need my coffee. It feels early, but it's not too early.
I meant liquid death.
Oh.
Sorry. Anyway, who are we talking to this morning?
We are talking to Tom Wright. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Tom.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Very well. Yeah. Thank you for your patience there as I butchered the intro 3 times. I had to record it 3 times. So thank you for that.
How are you?
I think it's okay. I think 3 times is respectable. If we'd been here for the full half hour, you would have beaten my record for the most times failing to introduce a podcast.
Surely that's exaggeration.
I wish it was. No, that was a professional low. At that point, I'm probably doing something wrong here. I'm not a polished person, as you're probably going to find out through the rest of this. Like, a big part of what I like is I like the reality of stuff a lot more than the kind of the conceit of it. So when you actually did a full ad read on the intro, then I'm like, wow, that's professional. That is impressive. And then you even worked in a secondary sponsor. If Liquid Death ever re-enter the UK market, you're going to be right at the top of that list.
That's it. I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting.
Get that Liquid Death money.
Yeah. So, Tom, your name has actually been mentioned on the podcast a good few times, but every time I hear your name, I think back to the Clubhouse days. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that's how I discovered you. Lurking in the rooms, hosting your own rooms.
living on the Clubhouse, like basically through the lockdown time. I don't think I did much else other than Clubhouse. It was Clubhouse, feeling miserable watching government announcements about what we weren't allowed to do, and then crying into my cereal that we couldn't do the job that we actually wanted to do in the first place. Like that was basically the circle of life. But yeah, that's definitely where I started. On most people's radar. I mean, I've been in the industry since 2010, but nobody knew who I was, because as you're probably going to find out through the course of the interview, I don't like talking about myself very much. It's not fun.
That's going to be great for a podcast.
Well, this is it. There's plenty to talk about. It's just that I kind of find that self-promotion part really difficult, which kind of works well because, like you said, other people talk about you if you do a good job. So if I focus on the work, it's kind of, that's fine. You know, I don't have to be, oh, look at me, how great am I? Because I'm working with all these amazing people that are doing all these cool things, and I get to help them do that. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those people are shouting about you because, as Simon says, recent episodes, it's been regular mention of, worked with Tom, I'm like, we need to get him on here.
I know. Yeah.
So thank you. I appreciate the invite. It's nice. And on the other side of it, I actually listened to your podcast before Clubhouse, and then actually when you recorded it on Clubhouse, I used to kind of make a special effort to come and sit in the rooms and lurk like an absolute weirdo. I always remember that. Because that's what we did. We listened to your recording.
We do appreciate it.
Yeah. So you obviously hate self-promotion and talking about yourself, but
let's do that anyway.
Let's go back to when you were shooting weddings and tell us a bit of your backstory about go from 2010. Who is Tom back then?
So at the time I was a guitar teacher, new to a new city and didn't do my research. And it turns out there were already 10 guitar teachers in a 1 square mile radius. That was kind of Bolton, which is just north of Manchester. And I decided, well, that's not great. Couldn't feed myself. Gradually lost all my client base in my old market and didn't have anything to do. So I ended up going into Manchester one day on a whim and walked into what I found out later was the distributor for Impossible Project. For people who don't know, there's a guy called Florian Capps who basically bought Polaroid's last factory after they went out of business in the 90s, early 2000s. And they had to start again. And because like the way the EU regulations were, they couldn't use the same formula for the film. So they had all this machinery to make Polaroid film, but none of the chemistry to make it work. So they started producing film again. And it turns out that it's really hard to make instant film without all the illegal stuff in the EU. So they had to start again. It just didn't work. So they released the first color film and it only had one color in it and it was pink. Then they released the second color film and it had two. It had pink and green. And basically, depending on how warm the film was when you took the photograph, it would either be pink or green. And this is like kind of backstory, but basically I walked into this little shop, bought like an obscene amount of Polaroid film and decided I was going to like do a little scavenger hunt for my friends. So I bought like 40 Polaroid cameras off eBay, which were like £1 a piece at the time because they weren't popular and the film wasn't available. And then bought an obscene amount of Polaroid film and then charged like per head. Like we say the film cost £20 a pack, it was like £25 per person, and did that to kind of pay my bills one week. And I went back the following week because I really enjoyed it to buy more film. And the guy that owned the shop said, well, hang on a second, what are you doing? Nobody's ever bought this much film before. And he basically explained to me, nobody likes it because they'll use it the way they used to use Polaroid. They'll take a photograph and it'll come out pink and they'll be like, this is broken, and like return the film or like ask for their money back. And like be angry that these memories were wasted. But then there was a huge group of like really creative people, like specifically Rhiannon and Adam. She's a photographer in the south of England, and she was doing some amazing stuff with this really weird film. And I kind of looked at it and think, well, the people that I'm looking at using this film are making some cool stuff, but your customers are saying it's awful. So I basically went on a deep dive, learned everything I could about the film, and started running workshops for them to try and stop people from returning the film. Ended up doing that all over the UK for about a year and kind of got bit. But there wasn't really a great deal of money in it because I was working through the distributors and not through some kind of creative process, and kind of let it die there. Got into weddings just after that. And then at that point kind of moved on to commercial photography. And then at the pandemic, started in Clubhouse, got a huge amount of exposure, used to run one room a day at least, but was regularly getting between 50 and 100 people in the room. It kind of peaked at like 250 or so people at one time, and ended up talking to a lot of photographers that were basically just really struggling with the way that life was. Like for those of us in the UK, we actually had a lot stricter lockdown restrictions than a lot of other countries, and it stayed longer. And if you're in the north, if you're outside of London, we ended up locked down for longer as well. So we had this huge period of time when nobody was doing any work and everyone was feeling miserable. So we kind of ran like a promotion-free zone, just talk about what's bothering you. Let's talk about photography and try and keep people a bit happier. And for the first time in my career, I started meeting people that were kind of in positions of power. Like I'd met Adam Johnson back when I was doing the Polaroid workshops, because he's also Manchester-based. Really got on, but then like kind of lost contact. He did all the 9-dot stuff and like became a big deal, and I had no idea. And then kind of reconnected at Clubhouse and started doing that kind of stuff. But met a good friend, Igor Demba, met Paul Williams, met a bunch of other photographers through these rooms. But the basic rule was never say anything negative. Always make sure you're giving somebody a real reason to feel proud of what they're doing. And then the rest of it will follow. Like try and keep as much like self-promotion out as possible so people don't start talking themselves up. And it was great because it was a chance to talk about the craft that I really loved, in a way that didn't focus on personality or on ego or any of those things. And you just got to have really good conversations, and sometimes quite vulnerable conversations with people. And after that, basically between Igor, Miles Whitboyer, and a few other people, I was basically forced kicking and screaming into starting education, because when Clubhouse died, people missed it. So I did. I started charging the same rate I was charging for my commercial photography for education, because I needed to replace one for one because I got a family. I couldn't, do it for free. And now I'm 100% photography consultancy, and not really doing any commercial work anymore because I don't have time. So that's kind of like a really quick overview from instant film to like weddings to commercial photography, and then how I got into education and providing support. So it kind of feels a bit full circle, because I started out in education and then I'm back at it now. So
So Igor forced you into education nicely, I hope.
Yeah.
But
literally kicking and screaming. Like I did not want to do it.
Why?
I had a bad experience. Like I don't know if anybody remembers. There was a in the Lake District, there was a photography education place. And when I very first started out, I did like their A to Z of photography business course. And it was basically a 3-day sales pitch that they charged at the time, amount of money that I couldn't afford to spend, and got absolutely nothing out of it. And it left such a bitter taste in my mouth. From that point, I just would not access photography education that was in any way ego driven or didn't have like really like strict outcomes, because I felt like it's not fair to charge somebody money to not actually improve anything. So it kind of really left me cold. And the reason it worked when Igor told me to do it was because he basically said, just make it goal orientated. Like, he said, you won't take people's money and not teach them something. So just make sure that's true. And that really helped. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you think there's too many workshops out there now, though?
I don't think so, because I mean, especially considering the majority of the people that I work with now are the ones teaching the workshops. Like it's that, I'm not saying specifically those people, but that's the level that people are at. And I actually think it's pretty useful because there's such a broad range of photographers with so many different styles that you can kind of sort of pick and mix what you really want to learn. So let's say you really want to learn about film photography with soul, and it turns out Ryan Mearhead's doing a workshop somewhere. Well, great, you can go do that. It's fantastic. And it means Ryan's got a method of income, and that should not be minimized. I mean, he can focus on artwork and all the rest of it. And I feel like for wedding photographers, especially, there's a huge number of people in very rarefied air with experience that you couldn't get access to without knowing all of the people surrounded to, like planners. And it's hard to understand the route in. So I think there's a lot of people that kind of that offer education right now that's very necessary. Like, for example, if you're trying to get into luxury wedding, like James and Schultz, they've got the business of luxury weddings. That's like an invaluable resource, because how else are you going to find that out? So I feel like the landscape's different now in the sense that there's more money going direct to photographers. It's more seen as like a skill share, but I need to be paid because otherwise I need to do more weddings. It's kind of like, it feels like a lot more equitable than it was when I started. I think that it's a bit more democratic now than it used to be. Now, whether there are too many in general, I genuinely don't know, because the other side of it is I'm not a wedding photographer anymore. So I don't have to do the kind of sums to work out whether or not every one of them's worth it. I do know that I've avoided doing workshops, group workshops fully, mainly because I feel like to get real structured growth when you're at a high level, learning from somebody else's method will only get you so far. So you'll learn how they do it, but then what happens if you don't want to do what they're doing? And then you end up stuck. And that's kind of where I see a gap at the moment.
Yeah. So you focus on the one-to-one style of coaching and education. Like who are you typically working with, and what types of things are you working on?
Yeah. So normally it's a photographer that's been in the business for a while. Initially it was photographers with 10 years plus of photography experience, but more recently it's been newer people to the industry because that network effect's kind of trickling down a little bit. But what I'm normally working on them to kind of help them with is to cover gaps. There's not usually anything specific, but one of the really common ones is giving tech skills to art first photographers because they want to focus on the creative. Like they're really, really good at making sure that they're constantly pushing and innovating, but then they get kind of dragged back by the fact that maybe their backup systems aren't where they need to be, or maybe they've got a lot of destination work and now their film lab is a long way away. Like how do they manage that kind of stuff? And it's a case of looking at the problems that people get later in a career and working out how to fill those gaps. And if I was to tell you like straightforward, there's one offering which is just one-to-one support. There's not really any particular time limit. You will do it for as long as you need and that's it. Really broad, but it's targeted. Like what do you need? Where do you want to get? Let's do that for however long. And then there are two structured courses. One of them is like an 8-hour color course where we start out with, here's how Lightroom works. Where do you want to end up? How do you get there? And by the end of that, you normally end up with custom presets. If you need them, a lot of people don't, but if you need them, we build them. Then there's a gap. So you can work like 10, 15 weddings, come back to me after you've edited the full season and be like miserable because of something. And then we tweak it, we fix it so that next time you come to do the work, you don't have those same problems and it makes your whole workflow faster. So I had one photographer I worked with right at the beginning of the journey who'd been in the game for a long time, like really high level. It's a name you'd know. But basically that they were buried under a backlog of work because they wouldn't let the quality drop. By the time we'd worked together, basically the weddings were being completed within a month of shooting, and she was back on top of her like backlog. And as a result, you kind of end up in a position where you can keep being creative because you're not being dragged back by this kind of like weight of kind of technical debt, if you like. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty broad, but yeah, that's that.
In that case, what changes did he or she implement to allow that sort of progression through the an editing queue, for example?
So, well, in a lot of cases, the issues that people have are technical ones, like the number of times they get photographers that don't have a backup solution, or they're trying to run everything off a 10-year-old laptop. It's kind of comical, but the thing is, I can't blame people because the photography industry is largely run by sponsorships, and the companies that sponsor photographers don't want you to buy the right solution for you. They want you to buy the solution that's most expensive or the one that will make them the most money. So to give you an example, in this case, it was about working out a mobile workflow that would then plug into like a long-term backup workflow. How do you make it so that you can do something on the road that isn't then going to cause you another headache when you get home and you have to deal with it somewhere else? And if there's a company breathing down your neck trying to sell you a NAS every time that you want to just back up a single wedding on the road, well, that's great. But one, a lot of people don't want to deal with that. And to be honest, for 99% of the photographers out there, it's a more expensive solution than they need. You're going to spend more time managing that than you are actually doing the editing work. So things like optimizing Lightroom around the way you're going to work to make sure you have the files where you need them when you want to edit doesn't sound like it would save a bunch of time, but it honestly does. Like knowing that when you sit down to edit, that 2-hour period that you've got is going to be productive, that's like the foundation. And then after that, we worked on color. And that was a case of like, right now, you're going through these processes to get to this output. And it's beautiful, but it's taking you like 20 minutes an image to get through it. How do we make it so that's more like a minute? Because in the end, like if you're working on B2C or anything that's time-based, your hourly rate is still something you should think about. And every photograph that you edit, a client is having to pay for it, or you're just eating it and you're making your life miserable. So it's kind of finding out a way to change the editing process so that as many of the things that you would have to do for every image is done as a batch. As many of the things you do to every image is simplified. The order of operation is changed so that you do things in the right way. So you're not waiting for things like AI previews to rebuild on the current version of Lightroom, all the rest of it. It sounds super boring, which is one of the reasons why it's quite hard to talk about, but it's trying to look at what you're doing specifically and trying to find the gap and close it.
Yeah. What happens if someone doesn't, is it often the case that like a creative might not know where the gap is, or does everyone kind of know where the gap is and they just don't have either the knowledge or the time to build the knowledge to fix the hole themselves? Or
both. It's both.
Okay.
Yeah, so for the vast majority, I would say that they're looking in the wrong place. So they know something's wrong and they feel the stress of it, but either they feel like they're not good enough because they're being told to hustle harder, like, and get through it with more work. And like one of my favorite things ever is to tell people that you can't solve overwork with more work. Like it's just not the case. That you have to look at what you're doing and try and work out where are the inefficiencies. And the fact is, for creative people, 90% of the time, the things that makes you stand out is something that's not efficient. And it's understanding where you need to fight to keep that in the process. Like if you're shooting film right now, I would argue that's probably not a good idea because the only good film labs that are consistent are in Spain, for a starter, in Europe. And you're then having to send it to DHL, all the rest of it. There's so many hurdles. But in the end, if that's crucial to the look of part of your work, then that should be protected. So we have to find a way of like, that's non-negotiable. Now what do we do? And sometimes photographers get pushed into the kind of like sharpness trap. So they'll be told that, oh, the reason your editing is slow is because your camera can't focus well enough, or your lenses aren't sharp enough, and all the rest of it. And every time photographers make these decisions based on what they're being told is the problem, because they don't know what the problem is, they get less happy with their work. And yeah, it becomes more efficient, but they lose something. So it's like, how do you keep the character of the work without kind of making your life a nightmare in post-production? And I think photographers that are, especially for guys, like this is a generalization without a doubt, but most of the guys that come to me think they're technical experts, and many of them are, to be fair, many of them are. The problem is that photography is not a technical field. You need technical skills, but you also need the creative side. So for people that do feel technically minded, I feel like my job is, how do we make you back off that a little bit to let some of the creativity back in? And in the case of people that are not technically minded, it's like, okay, here are your points of weakness. How do we de-emphasize those so they don't matter? Or how do we fix them? Or how do we change your messaging so your clients aren't expecting that thing that's causing you all this stress and pain? And when, like, on my website at the moment, I refer to it as phototherapy because I feel like a larger part of it is mindset. So
yeah. I was actually going to ask you about that, because it does feel, it's like, again, talking in generalnesses, when you feel like you need to go to the gym, for example, but it's hard to change your routine, or you're waiting for that kind of external pang of motivation that's going to be like the light switch.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is almost the same sort of psychological trickery that we do. I remember, I can't remember where I heard this, but it's one of my favorite lines. It was, you need to stop working in your business and you start working on your business. Because quite often I would be, because I'm the one who does all the editing, 90% of the editing, I can just be lost for hours in my laptop. And that means that I kind of need to rely on Greg to do emails and SEO stuff and maintaining of the website and other things. And when I get a chance to blog, I'll do that. But it's always like my attention kind of revolves around editing. And if I get space, then I'm in my business a lot. And I remember, and we've spoken about this, every like 5 years or so, we'd struggle somewhere in business, whether that be lack of bookings from not marketing enough, or feeling burnout because of everything involved in the creative side of our business. Always a struggle. Always a struggle. But I always feel sympathy for those solopreneurs who out there who are just like, you go to weddings and everything is on you. That is very, very, very stressful. And although, yes, like I have Greg, that comes with its own issues. Obviously,
wow, Greg, I would be offended.
I am.
I mean, nice issues, but different issues from what solo shares have. I can't remember where I was going with that. Just a ramble.
It wasn't a ramble. Like, honestly, just to kind of recap to make sure I get it. You basically said, to go to the gym, you need a push, which is definitely true. Currently feeling that problem. Like, since lockdown, the weight gain has been real. So I'm just gonna say I definitely feel I need to push to the gym. But also that thing about like creative isolation and division of work, that is a real thing, because the fact the two of you working together will have an implication on what price you have to charge. But it also means that you've got more capacity than, say, somebody that is working solo doing like 25 destination weddings a year, because they're not working on their business, they're on a plane. It's that kind of thing. I totally get what you're saying. So I'm guessing the thread you were on was, no matter what choice you make, there are trade-offs.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, but that we all do need a hand somewhere along the lines.
Yeah. You need somebody to give you the push to, like the phototherapy. Like, I think that's why you've titled it phototherapy, is that people don't know they need it, but then once they do, they'll see the transformation and they'll see the progress.
Well, and if you think about it from the other point of view, like, this is true for a lot of creatives. I'm not claiming to be an expert on this, but a large proportion of the creative industry is also neurodivergent. So they've got other issues with executive dysfunction, or they've got issues with kind of like self-regulation. So if you're sat behind a desk in isolation and there is no external input, it can be nearly impossible. Like if you have ADHD and you're not currently hyper-focused on the work you're doing, you're not engaged with it, there's a huge amount of stress with forcing yourself to focus on something you aren't excited about. And the thing is, sometimes you then look at that problem and think, you know what, I'm just not working hard enough. I can't focus, and you start to feel miserable and you get this shame spiral. And like I said, I'm not an expert on this, but at the same time, if you then make that same person interested in the work again, you don't ever have to worry about motivation because you're kind of engaged in the process again. And I think that's a big part of how you power through. And also we're in this really weird position where as creatives, we do have the ability to give ourselves a bit more grace than the average person. Like if I'm having a bad day and I wake up in the morning and I don't have any client calls, I can go back to bed. I'll have to do that work in the evening at another time. It has to get done. The non-negotiables are still there, but you have the option to do less. And I think that comes with its own dangers too. Like you said, like how do you remain motivated if you can just sack it off, go back to bed and not try? Or if you want to be growing and you're trying to be productive and you're banging your head against a brick wall because you've got literally no energy left, how do you make it so that you don't let anybody down and continue at that pace? And that thing you're saying, work on your business and not in your business, I think it's seen in every element of photography. How many photographers do you know that do anything other than post their own work on their Instagram? Because it's not that many. And that's not a criticism, but that's like showing behind the scenes for another business. It's not creating a catalog. It's not doing anything to kind of define your brand. It's just, here are the things that I made and here's who I did it for, which is wonderful if somebody already knows they want you and want convincing, but it doesn't do an awful lot to kind of make you stand out, make an artist statement. Like it's not giving you a chance to create without expectation. And I think for a lot of photographers, a big part of what I can help within the phototherapy side is, well, outside of a client pressure, what would your work look like at a wedding? Or what would your work look like when you're on the side of a mountain for that clothing brand? Like, what is it that makes you feel energized by the work? And how do we make sure that you're selling that to somebody so that they can buy you for what you actually want to do, so you don't get demotivated, you don't get burnt out to the same degree? How do we refocus you on the things that you really care about?
So if someone doesn't know where the holes are, how do you lead them to where it might be, where they might find issues in their business? So
everything starts with a consultation. So when you, on my website, the only thing you can do is book a call with me. So we basically get on Zoom or whatever streaming platform like conferencing platform we decide on, and we talk for half an hour to an hour usually, and you're sharing your screen essentially. So you can show me your workflow, I can see what you do, and we can have a look at it from that point, or we can have a conversation about the work that you're doing right now and what you feel about it. And I can try and give a more objective perspective about how others see it. Like, what is it that makes your work valuable? And then look at that point and think, well, if that's the thing that's the core of it, and I'm seeing this, it gives them a chance to respond and decide, do they want that to be what people see? Is that really the thing they want to be known for? Is that the way they want to be perceived? And people forget like how much of photography is the photographs. People forget how much of videography is the video. And I know it sounds silly, but so many of us are taking the same courses, we're working with the same cameras, following the same advice from the same YouTubers, and coming away with results that are ever narrowing. And especially at the moment where there are so many people in the industry, and I think for a lot of people, they are struggling with bookings. It can be then scary to do something different, to step out of that and be maybe 10%, 20% left of everybody else in that niche that you're in. But that also is how you get noticed and how you stand out. So the way that you kind of give people confidence is by adding more weight to that, like looking at the things they're good at, saying it out loud so they can hear it. Because a lot of people never actually hear anything positive about their own work, which is miserable. But the two of you are together and you have each other to bounce off. So if you think something's terrible, you can tell them. If you think it's amazing, you can tell them. But for a lot of people, they're just sat with a self-doubt, like 7 days a week. And then on the seventh day, they have to then go out and remotivate themselves to shoot again. And in the summer, it's 3 times a week. So it kind of has compounding issues. So when you say, how do I do it? It's a case of looking at every person as a unique person with a unique business and unique aspirations, and trying to understand the difference between what they want and what they're producing, or how they're producing it, which is, again, it's part of why it's quite difficult to talk about it. And one of the reasons I struggle with marketing, because if I was to tell you that I'm going to spend an hour on the phone to you, and by the other end of it, you're going to feel better and we're going to know what to do, that doesn't sound particularly like quantifiable. So it's also why those consultations are free, because I feel like I can't ask you to pay for it if you don't know the value in it. So I really do want people to kind of come away with it feeling motivated and make other decisions off the back of that. And if you think it's complete nonsense and you want to carry on doing what you're doing, like I'm not going to get mad about it. Like it's a good hour talking to somebody else.
Yeah. Wait. So you have an hour consultation call for free?
Yes. Although I say it's half an hour, I book out an hour for every client, and we very regularly go over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Hey, I'm Ashley from With Jack. I'm one of the sponsors of the Perspective podcast. With Jack helps to keep photographers in business by supporting them financially and legally if they have problems with a client or they make a mistake in their work. We've all had that fear of our CF card or our hard drive failing and losing important photos. You can find out more at withjack.co.uk. Head over there and find out how we can help you be a confident creative.
Focusing on like the visual identity of a wedding photographer or wedding photography company, what would you say is the difference between visual identity and just a photograph or a photographer having good work and looking good?
So good work is the minimum. Like to be frank, like good work is like the baseline. Can you take a picture? Can you go to a wedding and get a photograph of the couple like during the ceremony? Congrats, tick. You're a good photographer. But the fact is that, especially as we're seeing more involvement in AI, it's just not enough. Like people are used to seeing things that are pristine, they're good, they're perfect. But the fact is, if they don't say something, it doesn't matter. And I think that visual identity now, specifically, I'm not saying generally, is more about the vibe that you get from something and less about the actual content of the photographs or like how technically good they are. And I think that this is something that Emmylou Kelly said this on my podcast. So I'm happy to repeat it because she said it specifically. But basically, she did a degree in fine art and she took photography as a portion of that. And the examiner nearly failed her because her photography was too perfect. She said it didn't say anything. So when you say visual identity, if you're saying everything correctly and you're following a best practice, you're not saying anything unique. Best practices literally suck if you're trying to do something different because it's what everybody else is doing. That's the point of it. And very often, I can't remember the quote in full or who said it, but it's beyond technical ability lies creativity. Like that's the thing. Beyond mastery lies creativity, something to that effect. It's the idea that once you've kind of learned how to be a photographer, you need to do the work of an artist. Like, what do I do now? What am I trying to say? And when I say visual identity, your visual identity could be very simply, I am going to be super affordable and incredible quality, because that's a brand position. It's like you're getting quality and you're getting price. That's fantastic. But that's probably going to force people into starvation eventually, because if everybody can get technically great because the equipment is making it easy to get technically great, you don't have a competitive advantage anymore. So what you're trying to do is be distinct. How are you different to the person next to you doing the same job? And it doesn't have to be global, but let's say you're an elopement photographer and you're trying to attract American couples getting married in the Highlands. Like you basically want to move to Inverness and never move away and be on Glencoe and all the rest of it. You want to be doing that elopement life. And every other photographer that's there is whimsical and soft and desaturated and warm. What do? Well, if you do any of those things, you're not going to make an impression. Like you may because of other factors, but your work isn't going to be the thing that's separating you. Whereas if you get vibrant, If you focus on going to unique places or framing things differently, maybe having them on one peak of the mountain that you climbed and you being on another and being distant and using compression to flatten everything to make it feel otherworldly, the way that you do these things can change the way that you're perceived. So visual identity for photographers, it's like, how do you make the things that you do separate your work from the other people doing the same thing? And one of the biggest problems is if you're already in a crowded mid-market price point, let's say you're one of the wedding photographers working at the average, which is £1,500 to £2,500, and you've all done the same education courses, you're all using the same cameras and lenses, you turn up to the same ballrooms every week, and you're working with the same events coordinators that are putting you forward, you have to be distinct from the other people there. Otherwise, they're going to choose you on something that's not in your control. So visually, that's how your work does it. In terms of brand in general, that's all the things that you do. Like, can you be kinder by de-emphasizing the work? Maybe that's a competitive advantage. But if you're trying to use your photography to separate you, what do you change to make yourself stand out from the number of people that couple is going to be considering?
Yeah. Obviously, like, talking about the visual, the photography part of it, the most obvious way is the colors and everything.
Yeah.
And you, through your color therapy course, you work with photographers to build presets and Lightroom workflows and stuff. Yeah. And I think we're okay to mention a couple of clients here because they've told us about you.
That's fine. Go ahead.
They openly talk about you, and I know you don't share too many client names, but Daniel Harris mentioned you're a strong believer in profiles over presets.
Agreed. Yeah.
So talk to us a bit more about why that is and what difference that makes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm here for it. Okay, so basically, to start out with, the editing platform that you choose does a lot more than you think. So off the bat, if you're using Capture One, this conversation doesn't apply to you. You've got a completely different set of issues. Capture One's raw processing is incredible, but it's also quite hard to develop for. So we're talking about Lightroom right now, and basically, Adobe uses profiles to decide what the color from your camera should look like. And without getting too deep into it, the profile that you select will basically change how every single control in Lightroom operates. It's like the foundation layer. If you're just anything in a profile, your exposure slider will react differently. Your highlight slider can react differently. The color sliders can react differently. Every panel is affected if you change that foundation layer. So if you're going in and you're clicking on Adobe Standard and moving on, you're probably missing like 95% of the power in Lightroom, because you can do things in a profile that is specific to camera, it's specific to exposure values, it can be luminance based, it can be super reactive. You can essentially use like 3D LUTs in it and further adjustments on top of it. It's super powerful. They are also a nightmare to build. You have to do it in Adobe Camera Raw and bring them across. And even then, some people are doing some really complicated stuff with like way more advanced software. But the profile that you choose to start with is going to just define how Lightroom operates in general. And on top of that, the amount of effort that Adobe put into building those profiles will affect whether or not you get good color from your camera. So the reason you hear people saying, oh, Sony color sucks, oh, Canon color sucks, oh, like Panasonic color sucks. Well, they don't. What's happening is you're using that camera in Lightroom and you're relying on somebody at Adobe to have profiled that brand new sensor in your brand new shiny camera in exactly the same way that they profiled the camera that you had before. So especially for Sony users, if you've ever gone from you shooting on an A7 III to using an A7 IV or an A9 or an A1 or an A1 Mark II, none of those colors match. They're not even in the same world. It's like they're completely different cameras. And it's because Adobe have not profiled them in the same way. Now, whether that's good or bad, that's a creative choice that you can decide. Like maybe you really like the way the A1 II skin tones look. I don't. I think they personally look a bit zombified. There's not a lot of color in them and they don't react very well. But that's not Sony's problem, because if you open that same file in a Sony application, which nobody's ever going to use, they look perfect. Because Sony has gone like, okay, we changed the sensor, let's change the editor. Because you think that it makes sense, right? It's a pairing. So when you think about like editing in Lightroom, it's about finding a combination of controls that work for your camera, for your lens choices, and get you the result you want. So the reason I'm a big believer in profiles is largely because you can have a third party do the work that Adobe is not willing to do. You can have it so that they can profile the camera so that colors are more accurate. There's a company called Cobalt that make presets that do that. I personally quite like using them instead of presets because you can do things like make enormous changes in every panel in Lightroom and compress them all into a profile and apply them at the beginning. So if you've got further adjustments you have to make, you can go back and you can use every single slider that you've currently had to use for your preset to correct a problem. So if you are in that one room where for some reason there's a ridiculous spotlight that's super bright, but your preset's already got your highlights at -100, well, what are you going to do? You can't fix that. So it's a case of trying to think about where your baseline is and making it a true baseline as well. So the reason why I prefer profiles, one, they've got more control. Two, Adobe isn't necessarily doing the best job at having consistent color on profiles between cameras and camera brands. So it kind of fixes that. And the final part is that it allows you to kind of have a neutral starting position that gives you more control and more visibility about what you need to change scene to scene. So that's kind of why I prefer profiles. And hopefully that's a good explanation. It is mega nerdy though. So if I didn't explain enough, feel free to get me to clarify.
Right. Okay. So you import your RAWs and those are just how the software processes the colors coming out of the RAWs.
Correct. So weirdly, there's a step before that. So there's a process that happens in camera before saving the file. That's called the image signal processor. And every chip, every sensor pairing, and every camera brand will tweak that differently. So even though it's raw, it's not just raw data. Stuff happens to it before it's saved.
Yeah.
From that point, Adobe Lightroom will look at that file and go, oh, it's this camera. I will use this dedicated camera profile that we've got in the background in Lightroom to turn 255 to full red. So it's taking the number, the raw data, and turning it into a color. And then Lightroom will render a JPEG because that's all editors are. They're just rendering JPEGs all the time, taking data that you can't see and turning it into something you can. The profile is almost like how they map that. Think of it like your technical LUTs if you're doing video. So if you're in Resolve and using a color space transform, it's a similar principle. But imagine that the color space transforms kind of sucked and you're probably closer to what the starting point is. So when you bring it into Lightroom, as standard, Adobe will have decided we have 8 color profiles that we provide you for free. We think this one's going to give the best result for this camera, and it automatically chooses it. And for 90% of photographers, they never even look at it, despite it being the very first thing you see in the editing panel, because they moved it and a bunch of other reasons. So it's kind of raw data, dedicated camera profile, which is embedded inside of a color profile in Lightroom, and that gives you your colors to start with. That renders a JPEG you can see. So if you've ever seen Lightroom build in 400 images, and then as it goes, they get uglier, that's because it's taken your in-camera preview, which Sony has decided should look one way, and Lightroom's gone, nah, this way instead. And that loading in over the top is that's why it's changing. It's applying the profile, and the profile is not as good as the processor in camera. Okay.
So when you apply a LUT, then... Oh, wait. Hang on.
Preset.
I told you it was nerdy.
Sorry. This is my video mind.
Photo and video.
Yeah, I'm getting confused between photo and video. LUTs obviously are what we use to color grade our footage. Kind of. Oh my God, where was I?
When you apply a preset, you were going somewhere.
Oh my God. Yeah. Basically, it's at that point of getting an image to look a certain way, and then the kind of how I see how you would apply a color over the top of something to really change the look of it.
Yeah.
To something. I mean, I'm not a technical person. I'm talking in complete basic general terms because that's the way my mind only works. I see an image over here. This is what I took in camera. Yeah. Okay, the presets are the
profile.
The profile. Oh my God, sorry.
I know.
The profile is whatever it is, but I want to make it a certain way. So I'm just going to work really hard with my preset and just force it into what I want.
Yeah.
Is that a very bad way of doing things?
No, in the end, the only thing that matters is the outcome. So if you're not taking a long time to do it and you're getting exactly the results that you want, change nothing, buy nothing, don't do anything, don't upgrade your OS, don't do anything, leave it. Like, you should protect that. You've done all this product development to work out what do I love and like what do I want, and that's fine. The thing is, if because you're having to do so much work on the preset every time, you're having to spend 20 minutes on an image, then you might want to take another look at it, because at that point it's kind of a business decision. It's like, I cannot afford to spend this long on this photograph. How do I make it so that either I can do this work once and have it work 10 times, or on every image? And it's working out to what level can I simplify this stuff? So that's a side issue. So is it wrong to use a janky preset that you love and gives you exactly the result you want? Absolutely not. But if you don't love the result, then I'm here to help with that. If you think it takes too long, I'm here to help with that. If you think that there's kind of some third option that we've not looked at, again, I'm here for that as well. If you have to change camera but still want the same look, because that happens like way more often than you think. Like back in the day, like the 5D Mark III weirdly has like perfect color for a very specific kind of wedding photographer. If you want skin tone to look peach, I don't know that there's a better option out there, because it just does that out of camera with just a normal processing from Lightroom. So if you've moved from that and then you buy yourself a Canon R6 Mark II, which I did own, I'm not just ragging on that camera, you're going to have to work to get back to that baseline. So it's that point that you look at it. So if nothing needs to change, then don't change anything. That's just crazy. You should change things because there's a business reason, there's a personal reason, or because there's a creative reason to change it.
Yeah. Quite often, though, our business and personal lives kind of intermix. So, for example, this is my personal laptop. I also edit on this.
Yeah.
And I have my, it just auto updates. And that has caused me issues in the past. It hasn't caused it recently. In fact, I'm kind of on the upswing where my exporting time has been hugely improved for some reason. Because I don't know if you edit video at all, anyone out there, or Tom.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant me then.
No, anyone out there, like your export times can vary so much, and for no apparent reason, it can just lag like 3 times slower. And when you're editing, I don't know, a ceremony, it's an hour long. That export time is very, very large, and it could be like, and there's just no reason sometimes. You've changed nothing, and suddenly it takes a day to export, and you're like, "What the fuck?"
I mean, that sounds like Premiere to me, if I'm being honest. But maybe that's
it's Premiere.
Yeah. So
and then you get it, and it's not the same color. Like what?
So on that, like that's kind of the Adobe thing. Like they bring out these amazing, like powerful industry standard tools, and then when they get this dominant position, you kind of see that gradually they kind of stop trying as hard. And I think Premiere is getting better. Like I remember when I used to work in house for a company when I was doing commercial stuff, they had an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, and I actually went out and bought a new license for Final Cut on my own because I couldn't handle it crashing so much. And that isn't the case anymore. Like I don't feel like Premiere is like that, but it's that kind of black box element of it. Sometimes with Adobe programs, the problem you're looking for isn't what's in front of you. It's from like 5 versions ago. And they don't, it's not even really on the surface anymore. But yeah, I wholly get what you're saying. Like sometimes things just get worse and you just want it to go faster. And honestly, if I was talking to you right now, I'd say, well, probably you should maybe move your edit into a different program that isn't as variable. But at that point, if I say that to you, I know that in your head, you're like, but I've just spent 10 years doing this, or I've spent 5 years doing this, or now I'll work for, and I've got 20 odd more weddings this year. And that's kind of the point where I'm like, well, that's why I'm here. Like that's the reason you have me to do it. Because rather than going trial and error, how do I do it? We do guided sessions and you get through to the other end of it. And you're like, okay, now it's as fast or nearly as fast. But I know that as I get proficient, it's not going to be, okay, now I'm just going to sit on my hands for 6 hours because this ceremony, this one, for some reason, doesn't export properly.
Talking about like established photographers, because like we spoke to Paul Williams recently. He talked about how you created a brand new sort of profile and preset for him by sitting down, analyzing Nolan films. But what about somebody who's like, I'm happy with my coloring, but I know there could be changes made. What does it look like in the process for them? Like, why would they come and do the color therapy?
So in Paul's case, it was a bit of a weird one because we are like friends outside of this. Like again, Manchester based for a long time. So we used to just grab coffee occasionally. And one time we were sat down and he had his laptop out and I looked over at the screen and he just invested in all this Leica gear. And I'd never seen his RAWs before. Like I see a lot of RAW files, but I hadn't seen his. And he had taken some pictures while we were having a cuppa and he plugged the card into the laptop and the colors came up on the screen and they were beautiful. And then his preset applied and I was like, oh. And he watched my face. He saw my face drop and he's like, what happened? Yeah. So we had a conversation about it and we spent maybe sort of 5 or 10 minutes of me editing that one photograph. And he's like, I can't go back, Tom, I need to book you. So it's like, I think Paul's kind of a weird case because it's not that he was aware of it. There was nothing wrong with his old work, but it's almost like you don't know what you don't know. You don't realize what's possible. And in his case, he was trying to solve this color problem that he'd had from when he was shooting Sony. And he was trying to fix it with a camera brand switch. And to be fair, the camera brand that he switched to has insane color. You can say a lot about Leica cameras, but they make beautiful files. And regardless of whatever else you look at, he had this stunning work. So he had this insanely expensive lens. It was a 28mm f2 Leica lens. It was like probably like $8,000. And then this preset came on and it kind of stripped out all these colors that lens was working so hard to kind of like preserve. And I think sometimes it's understanding what you care about because it could have gone the other way. He could have been like, no, I love it the way it is and that's fine, move on. But then why are you spending so much money on the lens? Next time you need to buy a lens, maybe don't buy one that expensive because you don't need that level of color reproduction because your work doesn't rely on it. So if you're working on an image and it's like fairly single color forward, like it's called single hue dominant, where you kind of have one color that overrides. Like very often you see it in like a biscuity brown color or like a magenta brown color. And that happens a lot because people get Sony A7 IIIs and think, oh, I like this camera. And then they get used to the color. And that's the way you made that particular sensor look a certain way quite quickly. And you got really popular in the wedding industry. If you love that, don't ever sell the A7 III. Just don't. Because every other camera, you're going to have to fight harder to get it. So in Paul's case, it wasn't like he wasn't aware that he wanted to change something. He knew something wanted to change. He loved the experience of using his Leicas, but it's like he didn't know where the issue was. And again, I think asking an artist to kind of understand perfectly what every step in your technical chain is doing to your work, I don't think it's fair because it takes your attention away from the stuff that matters. Because for me, Paul's work is primarily about the way the people in the photographs look. Like they're having a good time. He's present. He's forward in the image. So any decisions that he makes can be around how he has more of that. How am I more present? How can I be more involved? And then the color choices on the back end, we can work on that in isolation and it doesn't change the core of his brand. It might make it look more appealing. It might make him stand out from the crowd. I like it now. I really like it. It's actually one of the projects I've been more proud of, like the results from. And the other thing is that this isn't all done in isolation. Like we use off-the-shelf products as well. If there's a company making a profile that's available for purchase and it does 80% of the work, we should buy it. We should include that. So we make presets, but they involve components that come from these other companies that are also being compensated for their work. Just to kind of make that clear too.
Yeah. Is that why when people buy lots of presets and they apply them, it doesn't work right off the bat, or are all these things designed to be tweaked and pulled and shuffled? But then, if you need to pull and shuffle things so much, why even bother having the lot of preset in the first place?
No, I'd agree. I think that's fair. And the problem is that that's a characterization of most presets that I've come across. But there are companies that make presets that do an incredible job. And they don't need that level of pushing and pulling. I think looking for a one-click solution off the peg is impossible because Develop, as much as they may test things, don't know your camera system. They don't know where you're shooting or what you're aiming for, and they can't. It's a general purpose product for a general use. And it might be that during the process of us working together, we use one of their options. I mean, it would be a first. I haven't actually recommended them before, but that could be the correct solution, because in the end, like, it's about understanding what's available and making smart choices. Now, personally, if you were going to make a choice of a company to kind of start with, there are companies that I trust more, but at full disclosure, I'm also a beta tester for them. So I don't really want to go plug in somebody specifically because I'm clearly biased. I picked Develop because I haven't really worked with them at all. Like I was on like a public beta program years back, but that's about as far as it went. And I think that if you're expecting a preset to be a finished product, then again, it's back to that cookie cutter thing. There's a million other people that have got that. And if you don't do anything to it outside of that, well, then your color is going to look similar to everybody else using the same equipment in that preset. So the way I would think about presets and profiles is they're part of your product development. When you're thinking about how you want your images to look, it can be a component the same way as a lens can be a component, the same way as a camera body is a component. You're choosing these things as part of your process, as part of your creative practice. If you're a film photographer, you'd select labs, you'd select film stocks, you might select scanners. With digital photographers, for some reason, we think that now we don't need to do any of that work. But basically, this is the equivalent. Like, what am I going to use to develop? Is it Lightroom? Is it Capture One? Is it something else? Am I going to use AI? Am I going to be doing this all by hand? Like, what level? All these choices that you make, they're part of your workflow, and that's what gives you consistent artwork. So, again, the phototherapy side of it, we might do some experimenting first. But if you already know what you want, color therapy is dealing with this. It's like, how do we take these tools, customize them to you, make sure you're using Lightroom in the way that's going to like work best for you, save it so you can do it on every image and save yourself a bunch of time, or get more consistent, or raise the quality. And then the back end of it is like the processy stuff, which again is super boring and I'm not going to go into again. So yeah.
You mentioned AI there. What's your two questions here? What's your general thoughts on AI editing?
Yep.
And then secondly, how do when you develop a preset for someone, how do they incorporate into an AI editor? So
I kind of give a presentation on this, and there are two slides that go next to each other. The first one is AI is amazing and it can save your business. And the second one is AI is a trap and it can kill your business, because both of those things are true. And the number one thing I would say is that if you're going to use AI as an editing solution, as in like, I'm going to use Imagen or Aftershoot or Impossible Things or any other service similar to those, and you're just going to say, do the edit for me. Well, your job is now to be a manager. You're managing the kind of AI running on your work, and nobody knows how it works. That's kind of the point of AI. They can't give you like a thought process behind it. It's just, you put stuff in and it spits stuff out. Then you go back through, you curate everything before you deliver it. You put it back into your model, and round the cycle goes. The thing is that the amount of time spent editing AI files is often larger than I would recommend you spend just editing them from scratch anyway. So I would always recommend that if we're going to do something, imagine that AI doesn't exist. It's not a thing. So if you're going to have it do it for you, imagine that's not an option. What do we do? What choices do we make? And then can we make it faster by incorporating these things afterwards? Because in the end, if you don't need it, well, I've just saved you like 10 pence an image or whatever the current price is for these things. And that can add up over time. And if you do need it, well, great. You've saved a bunch of time. That's amazing. And I really respect the people, especially Imagen. Like, they've been a really interesting company to talk to. I've had conversations with their team multiple times. They're great. We're also going to see more of this incorporated into Adobe. I don't know if you know this or not, but on the most recent update of Lightroom, they've now got a little counter. You can click a button on the far right-hand side of the develop module, and it shows you which AI tools you've used. There's already a credit number that you get as part of your account. I think you get 500 free credits, but they're not currently policing if you go over. But basically, it feels like, and I'll say this here because maybe I'll get points for like it being right in the future. It feels like they're about to monetize AI in a bigger way inside of Lightroom. So whether that's sky selection or super resolution or denoise or object removal, all these things, they're all being tracked now in a way that they weren't previously. So I think that's a good thing as well, because it means we can be transparent. So there's a standard called content credentials, which kind of embeds the AI changes you've made into your data for your file. So if you click on it, you can see exactly what the image would have looked like without the AI, or it tells you which elements were AI. And more commonly, the AI tools that I do like are things like object recognition, sky selection, subject selection, all these kinds of tools inside of Lightroom, because it's basically just reducing the amount of time that you would have to spend doing a non-creative task. Like masking somebody is not creative. Like in the same way as in video, rotoscoping is a job, but if you could just never do it again and just have it know what you want to select, we'd all want that, right? That's something that we'd want. And I think that the times when I think it's a danger is when it's making creative choices that you then don't have to make. And the biggest worry with it is not today, it's in a year or 2 years' time when you've used one of these like black box editing solutions for a while and not updated it because it's been getting you the result you want. And then you want to make a change, but you don't know how your exposure strictness is in your camera. You don't really know the kind of lighting you're shooting in anymore because you're not connected to both sides of the process. And it's not an unsolvable problem. It's just, it's going to make things harder when you want to make creative changes to that process because you're not aware of what's happening. The company isn't aware of what's happening. And if you're not constantly managing it, you're not going to be able to gradually make adjustments either. It's going to stay stagnant.
Yeah. That is, I kind of worry about that then for, I suppose, it's hard because in business you kind of, portfolio, you want your portfolio to look consistent. Like consistency is the key. So that doesn't sound too bad what you're saying.
No.
But then on a creative level, you do want to change and adapt and learn and express in different ways and have different ideas. And if you are leashed to do that, I think that's going to be a problem for many people.
It may be. In the end, you've got to remember that there are degrees of all these things. Like the amount that you allow AI to be in charge of this stuff is up to you. But at that point, it's like, well, what's the utility? Because let's say, for example, you're currently using AI to normalize your exposures. That's a fairly common thing to do. Like you want to shoot an aperture priority, but you don't want it to be that some of your images are really dark because it was backlit. You want to be able to just have that happen. Well, Adobe's already got that built in. It's called match total exposure. You select a bunch of images, you press 4 buttons, and it matches the exposure. So at that point, there's a solution already built into your editor. And it's one of those things where the lack of awareness becomes a problem then. But think about it the other way. Like if you were any other kind of business and you were developing a product, that product doesn't stay on sale forever. So let's say you're Apple and you've released that 16-inch MacBook you're sat in front of right now. Like they're going to be working on the next body design for that right now. And none of the tooling work they did on that is going to be transferable because it's going to be a different shape. And I think if you're the kind of person that sees creative work almost like seasons or like collections, like, like if you're a fashion designer, even you'll do spring, summer, autumn, winter, all that kind of stuff. And every year it's moving forward. If you're conceiving of your work as this is how I will be for the cohort of people booking me now, but next time I'm working on something big, well, then that's fine because you can do the product development separately. You could be building your new AI model next to the one you're running. The question is whether or not that actually saves you any time over just doing continuous improvement all the time. And again, there isn't a right answer because for some people, that efficiency of not having to worry about getting the consistency in the moment can overcome a technical fear. Like maybe you don't feel that you're good enough in Lightroom, or it can overcome a time problem where you can't do it fast enough. All of those things are really valuable. And again, it's not saying it's good or it's bad because it's both. It is good. It is bad. So how do we minimize the risks while getting the most out of it that we can? So I know that's a bit of like a kind of a politician answer because I'm not telling you it's great or terrible, but that's the point of it. Like if it was black and white, then it'd be really clear and we wouldn't even be having the conversation,
Yeah, I agree.
What's like one common mistake, like talking about like portfolios that you see in a photographer's portfolio?
So worrying more about how clever you are than how somebody looks in a photograph. Like this is not an editing issue, but the number of people that will post ugly photographs of people that are just not flattering in the slightest because the composition's perfect or the light's perfect or it's a fancy photograph or it might be an award winner. Like the number of times that I see that is absolutely crazy. And it's not an editing thing. It's a case of like viewing your business as a function of you without the client in mind. And I think that one of the big problems that photographers have in general is thinking that my creativity alone is the only thing that matters. And it isn't, because your brand is not what you decide it to be. It's what customers think about you. And if you're in a position where actually you're making tons of photographs that photographers love and you're getting a lot of positive feedback from other people on Instagram, they're all photographers, it's time to reassess, because they're not your audience. And frankly, they're never going to book you. And if they do, it should be like a nice accident. There are so many more people than photographers getting married every year that care about photography, but they want to see themselves in a good light. And I think maybe that isn't the answer you were looking for, but I think that having more of a view to what your couple want to see is more valuable than feeling fancy in the moment.
Yeah. What happens if that is what makes you different?
In that case, messaging differently is fine. But if you're saying in your copy, perfect magic moments, like see yourself the way that everyone else saw you, and then it's like, it's not that, that's a problem. Because Paul, for example, he's got a sense of humor in his photographs. Really good sense of humor in his photographs. But then all of his copy is lighthearted, like individualist, like tattoo inspired on his branding. Like it's sending like a consistent brand message that people that care too much about what they think shouldn't come here. But the place where I see that problem the most is when they're also simultaneously trying to say magic moments, or like it's the dissonance. It's not that there's anything wrong with photographs with a sense of humor. I think they're great. But if all you're doing is following like a cookie cutter approach to messaging and trying to be magical moments captured beautifully, or like art of documentary, but then you're showing somebody in their worst light, it's a disconnect. So maybe you're right. Maybe the issue is not that these pictures aren't flattering. Maybe the issue is actually you don't know what you're about. So you're trying to be, your photographs are for photographers and your brand messaging is for your ideal client, but they're not aligned. So how do you bring them together? Do you really want to keep making those like photographs for photographers? We'll change your messaging, because then you can broaden it out so photographers love it and couples love it and they know how to interact with it. So yeah, I think you're right. The pet peeve is not that kind of shot. It's more like you don't know who you are. So you're trying to be two things for two different people. You're like limping on two different opinions.
Yeah. To be fair, I struggle with that drastically. In fact, I remember, so we picked out an image for Paul's show and tell.
Yeah.
And it was, do you remember Carpe fucking DM with the couple by the table? And obviously we chatted about how I saw a lot of humor in his images, but he's going through a rebrand. And he mentioned he won't be posting as many of those. And I kind of got a wee bit sad because I feel that there's so many of those images in his portfolio. And sorry, Paul, because we are talking about you and you're not here.
It's only good though. There's no negative here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking, where does the client? I suppose it's our own choices to try and reach to a certain clientele if that's what we want to do. Yeah. So I suppose it's on us to make that decision. But part of me is like, I feel like for me, if I was that way inclined, and I'm having this struggle at the moment, if I'm that way inclined, if those are the images that I take naturally, why am I trying to be someone else to someone else? But then I understand I'm coming at this as a purely privileged, creative individual here. That is a business decision, not a creative decision. And are we running this to make money, or are we running this to be artists and be fulfilled creatively?
I
feel like it's a little. I think it's both.
Yes.
but I do struggle because like, for example, I like alternative style images. I like images with humor, but at the same time, our Cinemate brand, not that. No, it's not that. It's dark, and because I also like the dark and serious and stoic imagery. So I find the two. I've never seen anyone merge the two kind of styles together.
Yeah,
I don't even know if that's possible.
So the reason you're struggling with it is because you are a human being, and we are more complicated, we are more beautiful, and we're more nuanced than a brand can ever be. A brand is only what people think of what you show them. That's literally it. Like, how do I make you feel with this business? Like, how does it make you feel? That's a brand. That's the whole thing. Yeah. So you're saying, I like this and I like that. Well, absolutely, you should. But it doesn't have to be part of that brand. And you said that yourself, like, that's not what Cinemate is. It's not that. So when you think about the situation that you may be in, if you're at a mid-market right now, and you're trying to make an escalation, you're trying to uplift your work, and a wedding planner comes to you and says, your work's beautiful, but this, and this shot has lost you 4 bookings. What do?
Curate your portfolio.
Correct. Because your client's telling you directly, change it. And you're like, yeah, fine, whatever. Because you can still take that photograph. Nobody has to see it. You can still take it. There's nothing wrong with that. And True. You having that option and having the creative fulfillment of being able to do things for you that are not for the people selling you, that's fine. But equally, actually, he owns a preset company. The guy's called Paul Von Rieter. He owns the Editorial Edit. And he is like ultra high end, like based in California from Canada. Really, really cool guy. Really nice to talk to. A lot of respect for him. He said to me at one stage, I had a wedding planner tell me that she would never book me because too many of my photographs had people drinking beer, and my clients don't have beer at their weddings. The day after, he submitted her another portfolio to share with clients with no beer in it, and he booked a wedding the day after. So you've got to think about it like that. Like, in the end, it isn't about what we care about, because I think beer is great. Like, currently I don't drink, so it's kind of ironic, but I do love beer. So if somebody said, do you want wine or do you want a craft beer? I would choose the beer every single time, because it's the drink that I prefer. Like, if somebody said, you want coffee or tea, I'm picking coffee. But if a planner tells you that I can't book you because they only have tea at our weddings, well, great, take the coffee photographs out. It's not going to kill you. Like, there are ways that you can find creativity in the room that you want to play in. And if that's the difference between booking weddings at £2,500 and 10, well, at that point, you're going to make a financial decision. Like, how much is it going to cost me to eat it this time, to not have that particular part of my like complex person represented in this brand that somebody else can buy from me? Like, we're all just bigger than the things that we can sell to people. And I kind of prefer it that way. I think it's nice. And if you're thinking about change of direction, like maybe you are presented with that and you think, no, I can't, it's core. It's so important to me. But then you need to make other decisions in your business to be volume based. Because if you're saying that you could make 4 times the amount of money from the same amount of work, well, then you can make that amount of money by doing a quarter of the work. Like, by reducing the amount you're putting into each job. So that's the thing. And as your career progresses, we all want to earn more. So how do you go about that? Do you become a volume business that's ruthlessly efficient and creative and appeals to a particular kind of person and stay at that price point, but become the best option at that price point for somebody? Or do you upscale and use every wedding as a way to find the next and find the next and find the next? And I think that we're complicated enough that sometimes the answer is volume at one stage and then smaller, more expensive later. And if you go back and forth, I don't think that's the end of the world either, because we're complicated people. We're doing a job that's got like a lot of physical demands on us. Like, I don't know about you, like, I don't shoot weddings anymore, but I did for quite a while. And it's one of those things where you've got to make a decision. Where do I want my energy to go? Is it worth working 4 times the number of events to keep producing the Carpe Diem shot? Like, is that worth it? And I can't speak for Paul, because honestly, I don't know that I didn't know he was doing that, frankly. Like, that's a separate thing outside of the work we did together. But you have to decide like where to position, because your brand needs to be part of you, but it's a part of you that's palatable to somebody that can afford to pay you the prices you want to get.
Yeah. You know, when you ask that question, first of all, is Paul rebranding? Did I just make that up?
I think he mentioned something about a slight change. Yeah.
Okay,
I don't remember how much rebranding.
Because now, like, I'm having doubts. I'm like, did he say that? I think he did.
Don't doubt
so
yourself. You're all
so many
good,
photographers have. I'm doing myself. Paul's like, oh god, this guy's fucking. Anyway, fucking. I have had so. By the way, I'm sorry if I'm all over the place. I've just had a lack of sleep. Summer holidays have hit, and the kids are like up till 12 o'clock at night, and I'm trying to wake up to do the gym at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it's just not working. My brain's frazzled. I do apologize, everyone. I know I'm all over the place. I'm sorry.
Absolutely not. This is great. Carry on.
It's a fucking car crash, but it's fine. You know, when you asked that question just then, and Greg quickly answered about, you know, what do you do if those images aren't getting your bookings? Greg was like, change them. You curate. I'm like, you stand by your goddamn art. I don't know. You know, there was a hesitation where I'm just like,
It all depends on where you see the balance of business and creativity.
Yeah.
Like, it's what we're just talking about there. Like, yeah, there's so many big name photographers that over the 15 years we've been in the industry, you see somebody, they get really established, start teaching, and then all of a sudden you notice, like, a couple of years later, you're like, your coloring has changed completely, and you're now a bit more lighter and airier to try and get that like luxury, air quotes, market. And it's because they've realized they maybe felt they could only get so far with one sort of style, and they felt they had to change.
So having seen people make that adjustment, though, like, very often that isn't the case. Like, outside you'd see it, but sometimes it's a case of like actually genuinely wanting there to be more nuance in their work. And the more heavy-handed you are with an edit, the less kind of like neutral your colors are, the less film inspired your work is, the more it's kind of like, I am imposing this on the image, because that's not what like 200 years of like color development in a technical sense has been leading towards. So like sometimes it's a case of, I am maturing. I want the work to speak by itself. There's a photographer that I know, again, I'm not going to name drop, but basically they don't actually do any editing at all. They don't use JPEG, they shoot RAW, but there's no color process. It's exposure and white balance, if there's any touch happening at all. That's it. So, and he's working very high-end events. Like, we're talking like $10,000 plus. Like, it's that bracket. And there's no color process happening. It's just, this is what comes out of the camera when I put it in my editor. That's it. Now, I think that's probably too far the other way, but it means that his entire thought is about content, like what's in the photograph, like what is in the image, and it completely shifts the way that he sees the world. So when you're saying like, oh, you don't see them a few years after teaching, the first thing is, if you're selling education and you're teaching your process, you don't have a business anymore. In terms of, you can't be the best at your thing while training your competition. So if, let's say you're a photographer and you're thinking, do I offer education? And you've developed a unique style, and your workshop is, here's how I did it. Well, in 2 years' time, you've trained your competition, because that's how it works. If you are a good teacher, you're training your competition. So you have to do something different, because you've essentially built a Me Too offering. And we see this with like big courses online. Like, you'll find like somebody offering like a videography course or a photography, like A to Z course online. And the ones that are good get successful, but then everybody's work starts to kind of like normalize around this kind of style that these very successful courses have engendered. It happens in the headshot community. Like, Phil Sharp is a photographer who's genuinely amazing. His work is like actors, it's headshots, it's slow, it's all shot on medium format, like really shallow depth of field, a mix of natural and consistent light. And every single headshot photographer looks like that. It's like, it's the new direction everyone's going in. And as a result, if you sell education around that, you cannot expect there to be a space for you to be this unique product offering when you've told everybody exactly how the product is made. It's because that's what they paid for, like, frankly. So when you see somebody change, it's like a few years later, they've changed the style and they're like a different photographer. It's because they sold the goose that lays the golden egg. Like, they developed this like rare process that people loved and then gave it away. And to be honest, it's part of why I'm kind of grateful that I don't currently have like a photography practice, because I don't have anything to hide. There's nothing to there's nothing to hold back. Like if you want to ask me something, I'll tell you exactly how to do it, because I'm not protecting anything precious to me. I'm not trying to be a competition. I don't have any skin in that game. I just want to see you do well. So to kind of push back a little bit, it's not so much that they've had an identity crisis or sold out. They solved their process in a lot of cases. So it shouldn't be a shocker when they have to innovate and they have to do something new. Like not a client, but a really cool guy like Philip White. Like he's a videographer, enormous online course, and then he did his original course and then completely changed his style. And that's necessary because if you become a Me Too offering, it can happen for all sorts of different reasons. Maybe it's not as unique as you think and it's easy to work out. Or in this case, you sell education and it teaches people how to do it.
We're going to interrupt this podcast to bring you an advertisement for PickTime. Our buddies at PickTime, we love PickTime. If you want to elevate your business, PickTime's maybe the way to do it.
It's an online gallery delivery service.
It's a really good looking one, which is initially how we got into the service. It just looks better than all the other kind of platforms that we personally use.
Yeah. We've over time got to know the owners, got to know the people behind it. Lovely people, great support system there as well.
There's just so many tools at your fingertips with PickTime. But the marketing and the blogs and the slideshow features.
Yeah, there's so much more than just a gallery delivery service. You've got all those things that Simon was talking about. You can create your own blog from it. You can create slideshows. One new feature that I really love is the vendor network. It's where you can use AI to curate a gallery for a specific supplier. So you could use AI to gather all the photos of the flowers and send them to the florist, and they would have that gallery specific just for them.
It's kind of a mind-blowing feature.
Yeah.
And we might as well be taking advantage of AI before the uprising and it starts taking advantage of us. So let's just all bear that in mind.
Yeah, and not to mention the built-in store, and that way you can just make more money while also having a nice, aesthetically pretty gallery.
Yeah. And if you want to sign up today, you can get a free month if you use Perspective at checkout.
Yeah.
So if you want to test out for free for a month, go for it.
Take your business to the next level with PickTime. Yeah. When you were talking earlier, I was thinking of Philip White because there's so many, like his style of like 85, like stable shots, holding them. That's just almost the standard for like UK in particular wedding filmmaking. Like he just taught so many people that he had to evolve, didn't he?
I haven't checked out Philip's work in ages.
Honestly, you should.
Holy shit, it's so different.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like
that's crazy.
And his stills work is excellent as well. And again, not a client. So I can like gush over it all I like because I'm not breaking any confidence by doing it. But his work this is a prime example of what you need to think about with education in general. Because I think a lot of photographers think, well, I want to go to somebody who's active in my industry. And I think, well, if it's a business course, you should. You definitely should, because they're going to know the reality of it. If they're getting the clients you want, you probably should. But the other issue you've got on top of all of this is that as things change, they came up in an industry that's different to the one that you live in now. So when Philip came into the industry, he was the only one doing that style. So he could stand out by being that in a world where the competition was maybe still using like a camcorder approach to weddings, and it was more like, it was less high quality. Maybe. I'm not suggesting that, it's just an example. But what I'm getting to is that the industry that you live in right now is going to require like different innovative solutions. You can't expect that even business advice given by these photographers is going to necessarily work for you. Because in the end, all we can do is give advice. All we can do is give you insight. And for me, I'm kind of glad that most of the stuff that I work with like is technical. So there is a correct answer to it. Like I can give you the right answer. But the fun bit is when that meets with something creative where you can choose the thing. Like, totally off topic, but right now, this is my favorite lens. It's a little 35mm 1.4 Voigtlander. It's the cheapest M-mount lens I could buy. It's terrible. As in, like, it's soft. It halorates when you point it at lights. And I absolutely love it. So is this a good lens? No, it's terrible. It's a shocking lens. Do I love it? Yes. Yeah, I do. And I think that's the area where I have the most fun with the phototherapy stuff, because you're not looking for the right answer. You're looking for the one that you like the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's funny. We for a while we used to shoot prime lenses. Oh well, right back it was a 24-70 2.8.
Yeah.
Loved that lens. I had a beast camera, always on my Glycam, and then that became a crutch, and so we moved to handheld and did primes. And I still love that prime look. I won't lie. Now I pick lenses that have autofocus and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
But I felt like at a point in time I was missing people first moments because I only shot with primes, and I didn't want to be. I'm talking like tears at a ceremony, right? If I'm down the front, I'm moving around. I would miss that shot because a 35 is just too wide for usually where I would be, and I wouldn't be able to move around. And so we got the 24 to 48 1.8. That autofocus is terrible on that lens. So when the 28 to 70 came out, f2,
money.
I got that. But it's a lens that has almost zero character.
Yeah.
It's so clean and
corrected,
kind of perfect in such a way that I'm now looking at the images I get from it and going, I got to remember this allows me to get those random tear shots if I can get them. This allows me to get the reach. Whereas most of the film, I'm going, it just doesn't look as good.
No.
It just doesn't look as good as the 85, but then it's benefit. It's always that to and fro, and I find that balance quite difficult.
Well, the thing is that if you start with that with the lens choice, then you're never going to find an answer to that. That's a branding decision. Because in the end, like if you think about it, and your brand is built around like reactive, like storytelling, like capturing moments, which is what everybody says, but they don't all mean it. Like, well, then you have to go. If you're making gear choices in line with your brand, you should be using the zoom, because you're not going to miss the moment. But if you're about character, about artistry, about emotion, well, then you've got scope to decide. Like, is it the emotion the person is feeling, or is it the weight of a moment that you can capture with like separating with depth of field or halation? I think that weirdly, if you were on Canon right now, the 28 to 70 to f2 on Canon, mega characterful. It's actually one of my favorite lenses ever. It's just a shame that it has to go on those sensors that have got horrible color in Lightroom. To start with, they could be fixed. I'm not trying to argue, but the 28 to 70 is a stunning lens on Canon because they didn't take like a perfection approach. They took it's a bag of primes approach. So the 28 focal length feels like a 28. At 35, it feels like a really nice 35. And at 50, it feels like a good 50. We don't really have 70 millimeter lenses, but I used to use it at 28 or 70 like everybody does with a zoom. There is no middle ground. And it looked good on both. But the issue there is that you then have weight. So whenever you pick up any piece of equipment, that part of your brain that's like, but if only, well, that's always going to be the case. And it's about making the compromises that you can go to sleep with and not wake up like stressed like the day after because something didn't go right. And I feel like there's a photographer that I'm going to name drop because I think he just deserves the eyes on him. He's called Jim Marsden. And he is an amazing guy. He's a commercial photographer predominantly. He did stuff for High Ute Denim, the Do Lectures, BMW recently, a bunch of he's very good at that kind of like slow fashion lifestyle work, and he's incredible. And he's recently made a new foray into weddings, and I think that he is probably one of my favorite photographers to watch because of the quality of his work. Ooh. And he recently switched from using, he's all film, which is hard to begin with, but he switched to using manual focus lenses on a recent wedding, and I was having a conversation with him, and basically I'd commented how the work that he'd published recently felt still and like thoughtful and weighty. And it wasn't there's anything wrong with the work before, but I asked him if he changed anything. He said, the only thing I've changed is I've started manually focusing. That was the whole thing. So the reason it changed the content though is because you can't manually focus if somebody's running, really. I mean, you could, but you'd be making it hard for yourself. Whereas if your skill is observation, the couples that you are attracting are not like extrovert, over the top, like hyper people. Well, that he's becoming a better solution for somebody thoughtful that values character. He's already made a primary choice of only shooting on film, which I'd say is like super bold off the bat. And then the other side of it is like not only film, only my hand, only my eye. So you can see why that kind of technical decision becomes a branding choice or is motivated by a branding choice. So when you're saying, this lens isn't characterful enough, well, what are Cinemate's values around character versus moment? Because you've made it a slider. You've realized that now that the equipment situation is what it is, it's a slider. It can have more easy or more character. And it's like a 1-to-1 scale in some cases. And maybe right now you're all the way on the easy side and that's not good enough for you. But then if you slide it back, where does the scale tip to a place you're comfortable? It's a brand choice.
Yeah. Or because we're all getting older. Maybe it's an eye choice because your eyes are going. All right. I'm just saying that's why I autofocus, because I can't handle looking at a wee tiny screen anymore, and I can't be bothered carrying a monitor.
I was going to say you don't want one of these ninjas like hanging off your camera with this ridiculous battery.
It just adds so much weight. I mean, look, there was was it last year?
Yeah.
Last year, I got the small big batteries, I got the rig, I got the external monitor with the battery, and it was great. The top handle, I loved it, but it was fucking heavy, and I didn't enjoy it.
No.
And so we went, because a lot of our thought processes evolved around. It all stemmed from traveling. How can we reduce our kit?
Yeah.
When we went to Italy or abroad, Norway. And then it was like, well, let's keep that same thought process for Lumens, because it doesn't make sense carrying a bunch of heavy cameras up hills, which we did for a long time. And then I got kind of allured by this, I love kit and you have to look professional and building up your rig. And then we've gone back the other way. And it's slowly creeping back into I shoot with 2 cameras on my hips and I don't carry my bag anymore. It's just that, so that I can be a person at a wedding instead of an actual fucking huge big camera. And I like the balance, but I wouldn't even know how to manually focus with my eyes.
I mean,
my old eyes.
I'm right there with you.
Not even that old, by the way.
This like old lens, but you're actually seeing it right now. So the webcam is actually a Zeiss manual focus lens on the Tech Art adapter, because it'll autofocus.
Oh yeah.
Because I also have terrible eyesight, so I'm right there with you. Great color perception, horrible sharpness. So it's one of those things where I think it's clear you've already made the choice. Like basically, your decision is, I don't want to give up next year. I want my business to be able to be around for like more than the next 6 to 12 months, and I'd like a spine that functions like when I'm in my old age.
Yeah.
So, because that's the downside with the Canon. Like I said, the weight is the problem, and like you as a Sony user, okay, you got less character, but you're not going to break your back just for using that every day for the next however long.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like some broad stroke career advice for different stages of careers.
Okay. Yes.
Because obviously, I feel like we've kind of focused more on established people in the earlier part. So
Tom said that right off the bat. That's his prime.
But you're getting some more newer people. Yeah. So what, for new creatives into the wedding industry, what's like the first thing they should focus on in their business? Usually?
So, I mean, you got to eat. So I'd probably get as much business advice from somebody that knows as you can. Like get your bookings under your belt. I think that there's no teacher like experience. I'm kind of in a weird situation that the earlier photographers that I deal with usually have some kind of experience in creative industries. Like,
right.
The photographer I've taught that's the newest is only been taking pictures for 6 months, but she was a fashion designer for like an entire career before that. So she doesn't have to look at a scene and think, where's the beauty? She just knows. Like it's insane. Like her work 6 months in was better than the vast majority of photographers that I've seen, including me. Like I'm not discounting anybody else. She's just great. But it's one of those situations where the hurdle is, how do I overcome a technical problem? And I think so. If I'm going to give one blanket piece of advice to everybody starting out new, try and get somebody that can help you be more self-aware. Like whether it's a friend or a family member, help them to look at what you do well and listen when they tell you what you're good at. but also listen when they tell you that there's an area of opportunity. And if you don't have somebody in your life like that, you can hire them. Like, it doesn't have to be me. There are other people that offer mentoring and courses. Find somebody you trust to look at your work and tell you what's good about it and what needs improvement. And in some cases, the hardest time to kind of give feedback on that is if the work is just good. Because good work isn't remarkable. There's not an easy fix for it. And me telling you need to completely rethink and start from scratch, like, what do you care about? That is a really hard thing to answer. So if you start out by regularly looking at your work and thinking, where is the beauty in it? What would a client love about this? And what makes me different? That's a good start. But I would suggest that you have somebody else external that helps you by looking at it. Because I don't know about you guys, self-awareness is not easy, but I'm pretty good at seeing patterns in people's work. So having somebody that can sit you down and give you that kind of insight is massively valuable. If you're like mid-range in your career and you've been doing this for a while, you're already booked, so you've got a set client base and you're starting to lose interest. Say you've done the thing that got the bookings because they said, oh, we just want a photographer that'll do this. So you did the thing that got you through it. Like you were saying about your 28 to 70, and I want to get through it. But you feel like you've lost that. You're not so worried about making some changes. You've got some money in the bank. That's kind of where I'm most commonly working. And people in that situation, I would start by looking at the people you want to work with and who they're booking, and then work out what you could do differently. So this is the option. I need to be close enough that I'm kind of at that level, but different enough that if somebody showed me next to them, it would look different enough that I might get the booking on the merit. And for people that are long-term established, it's different for every single person. Like, and if it wasn't, they wouldn't be that far into the career because they've already become the perfect solution to a problem. And usually it's a case of, well, what hurts? Like, why are you not happy right now? What do you need to change? Why are you looking to move direction, and addressing that side of it? And it isn't a cookie cutter. So there is one other blanket piece of advice I could give, which is be selfish about your creativity. And like, if you think, oh, clients don't care, one, I think that's the worst advice anybody could give. Because if clients don't care, why would they pay a photographer? If they don't care, why would they pay you more than the one that's half the price? The issue is that some clients don't care, but if you only want to appeal to them, you're going to starve, because you're essentially just telling yourself that creativity doesn't matter, none of this matters, and the people that really think that don't value it, so they won't pay you. So what you're trying to do is appeal to somebody that will see it. You're trying to think, if somebody could truly appreciate my work, what would they want to see? How could I show them differently? How can I elevate them? Or how can I do something differently? Does that answer the question? Like, I kind of lost the thread there a little bit, but
yeah, no, I love that. What about for people who have been like really established in their career? I feel like it's almost harder because they've had all this. They've gone through so many iterations of failure, success. On the most case, I don't want to generalize, I suppose. Maybe I do, I don't know. That they maybe feel like, I'm now at a point where I've gone through all these struggles. I've seen what works. I've seen what doesn't. And they're there.
Yeah.
Do they need to do anything else?
No. But you basically describe somebody in a perfect situation. Like, they've solved all the problems. They're working for the clients they want, and the work's what they want to make. That's the goal. I just think that potentially that's impossible because the people you're working for are getting younger all the time, and their life experiences are different. Like, who could have predicted that Gen Z were going to absolutely go nuts for cassettes? Like, cassettes are like the worst audio quality.
They are so bad, by the way. Has anyone listened to a cassette recently? Fucking terrible. Get yourself a fucking vinyl. Jesus, so weirdly, bad.
Though, if you want the best audio quality from from that kind of media, get a CD. It's better than streaming. Like, but the point is that that's not how we make decisions. Like, I am exactly the same as you. I've got a turntable downstairs. I got it for my anniversary this year for my wife because she is addicted to Sleep Token. And they released a limited edition album. She's like, well, I bought her the album. She had nothing to play it on. So it's like, okay, well, now we need a record player. But that's kind of the point, because as industries change, like the products that we offer will change with it. So the reason this vinyl revival is happening to a large degree is, one, because people value single and focused experiences, like being able to listen to music and just listen to music and not have it next to Instagram or next to TikTok or whatever, like just the one thing, like single tasking. And how on earth could iTunes have realized that was going to happen? Like you don't know about these reactions until they come up. But if I was iTunes right now, Apple, feel free to steal my idea, it's fine. But if I was Apple Music right now, I would be integrating sales platforms and doing things like, here's how you support the band, and like doing things to kind of build community around stuff. And I'm sure they tried that before, and it's probably a horrible idea, but it's an example of how you can make adjustments to your business based on changes to your audience. Try and look at what they're actually saying to you in the moment. And maybe you are a perfect solution to one person, but people change all the time.
Yeah. Did you hear? I'm trying to remember the name of it. There's an AI band, the Velvet Sundown. Is that what it is? Oh, I can't remember. What's your thoughts on AI for music and creativity and
so,
like in other fields?
Generating creativity.
Can you? Yeah. Well, yeah.
It makes me angry when people use generative AI and don't do anything with it. So, it's frustrating because there are people that are doing it really well. So, for example, if you look at Jonas Peterson, like he did amazing wedding photographer to start with, like really interesting person to kind of follow his career because it's been massively different. But he did a huge piece of work with Midjourney on producing fashion photographs of older people in unusual situations. And those images were insanely creative and beautiful. And he's made a great amount of money. If you want to find more about that, Miles Whitboyer's podcast, the Photography Collective, like he had an interview and he talked about it, including numbers. So if you want to find out how that worked, feel free to go. And I think that work is interesting and different. But Annabelle Beeforth from Love My Dress, wedding blog, made a really interesting point that what about the people of that age that now feel excluded because that body image is impossible? What about all the people that have maintained a physique that could work at modeling at that age and can't be used for this kind of work because rather than using a person, you used AI? Like, who is being marginalized by these things? And I think it's difficult because in a vacuum, those images wouldn't have existed without AI. But equally, if you were dedicated and driven enough, it could have been done in the real world in a way that would have brought other people up with you. So I think my concern with it is that it's not enabling and not creative, but one, it's built on the backs of other people's sweat and they're not being compensated. And two, it is actively discouraging the booking of people that are making this kind of work going forward. So I'm using a photography example because I think that it will hit home with people more. But when you listen to AI music, if you subscribe to one of these audio subscriptions that do royalty-free AI music, you're literally taking money out of the pocket of an artist because otherwise you would have paid somebody a small amount of royalty to use that music. And I think that is the issue. The economics are skewed. The kind of provenance of it is like at the very best dodgy, and at worst flat out intentionally exploitative. And I think that when we make decisions about the things that we buy, sometimes it's important to think about what it's going to do going forward. If you knew that buying the audio track will starve a friend of yours that's a musician, would you still do it? And if you can't answer yes to that question, then you shouldn't do it. Maybe that's idealist, and I'll probably end up having to change my tune because I don't think I've got any control over it. But I would rather that people made creative things using tools that can be enhanced with AI rather than allowing the black box to make the creative thing.
Yeah, I would actually agree. And part of me is like why? Like if these bands or tools become used to a degree where it's like, well, I'm a record label, I don't need to pay a certain percentage of bands to create some music. I can just put AI music in like filler. I mean, these tracks, some of them are pretty good. They're a bit soulless, but pretty good. You could easily be tricked if it's like in a shop, or you're wanting to create a vibe and it's just like littered. Like a record label could save like probably a substantial percentage of their earnings not having to pay other artists. So yeah, you're right. I'm interested to see going forward how exploitative it's actually going to get, because I really do think that we're only just on the surface at the moment with this AI stuff, and people are just like, oh, it's great, it's convenient, it's a tool, and it's like, how pissy do you get when a planner steals one of your images to sell a wedding? At least that's a real fucking person that could be like,
and they might be talking about you in a good way outside of that. They've taken the image of that credit, but you don't know what they're saying about you outside the room. That's still being used. Like, it's still, not ideal. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that planners should steal images.
Yeah. No.
The best way that somebody, I can't remember who said this to me, but basically they said, if you can't put machine learning instead of AI, it's probably nonsense. So machine learning image generation makes you think of like, well, it's just spitting out the stuff that you put into it. Whereas like machine learning grammar tools, okay, that's fine. You've probably looked at the way I've written before and you've changed it. Like, nobody's looking at Grammarly and going, oh, it's evil. Or maybe it is. I don't know. But like, they're not looking at it that way.
It might be.
But when you see things like, there was recently a ChatGPT update where everybody did these kind of like cartoonized versions of themselves that were Studio Ghibli styled. But the creator of Studio Ghibli is expressly saying this is destroying art before they did this. And all these people that clearly like Ghibli are like, you know what, I'll pay Sam Altman £20 to be able to turn myself into a cartoon that makes the creator of this art style cry. Like, it's just, it's such a strange thing. And yet, if you're talking about large language models for other reasons, every one of the meetings that I run, I have an AI transcription running, because it's just using a machine learning model to work out what words were said and write them down. Now, to me, that's not evil. It's not hurting anybody. And in this case, it's trained on my own speaking voice, which I'm fine with, and usually my clients are fine with it. And if people wanted me to turn it off, I would do. But it's a useful use of it. But when you take the person out of it, or when you're exploiting the person or limiting a person's ability to earn from that in the future, I think there needs to be another conversation, because we don't even talk about the number of artists in the future that would have made a living and made a start making royalty-free music on a laptop that just will not be able to do that anymore. Like, what if your niece or your nephew or your son or your daughter, like they were in the situation where they want to be a musician, and now that lowest rung of the ladder has been cut off because we've decided that the slop that the AI outputs currently is enough, and when it gets better in the future, and it will, we're okay with that not being a career that people can do anymore.
Yeah. Or if they do, it's not for pay, it's for enjoyment. But then,
minefield.
I personally don't like the whole image generation. It's fun to play around with, don't get me wrong. But I think on a purely moral level is where I'm like, I don't like it. And I have played around with it. Even Greg generated a Studio Ghibli image.
Did I?
You did at one point.
I love how he's throwing you under the bus there, Greg. You could have kept that quiet and we never would have known.
I did. I threw him under the bus there.
I don't remember this.
Look at Disney, though. Like, Disney did Secret Invasion, and the introduction to that was entirely made in Midjourney. Like, every frame, like, they made a whole animation for like a 3-minute intro in Midjourney. They're now suing them. Like, literally, like, oh no, it was okay when we used it for our multi-million like, that was fine, but you're able to make Mickey Mouse now, so now we'd like some money, please. Like, it's just the economics of it are the only thing that anybody seems to care about. And it's weird how companies will use it until they realize that the impact it will have on them in the future, and then you see real quick changes of position. This is, again, we're not talking about stuff like Imagen and Aftershoot or like Sky Selection in Lightroom. We're talking about something being made from nothing, essentially.
I heard someone say to me, but that's how brains work. That's what we do. You know, they quote "steal like an artist." I'm like, yeah, I've read that book. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Imagine. Okay, it's not the actual process of learning from other people, because we all do that. what happens if it's just the money goes funneling into other creative endeavors and the other goes to whoever owns the technology that does this process like your brain, and it does it a lot better and faster? Then where's the money going to? On a purely moral level, then you've got rich people getting richer and poor people getting poorer. And that's not good.
And that's I agree with that. No, I definitely agree with that. And the final thing I'm going to say on the topic is that this is part of why we're getting the vinyl reaction that we're getting in music, because people are craving something that feels real and rooted. And the more you can do to connect your clients with a physical experience, something that's memorable, the better. It's like wedding photography, wedding videography. You're probably safer than the commercial photographers that I'm working with. Like there's a company currently, again, I think it's H&M, but I'm not sure. They just run an ad campaign where every model was AI, that the garments were AI, and they did a full it kind of caught heat. If it's not H&M, I'm sorry, H&M, but I'm pretty sure it was. But again, it's what cost would that have saved them? Probably hundreds of thousands of dollars if it was a catalog shoot. I think about all the talent or licensing fees, but that's, again, like you said, it's money that's not going into catering companies. It's not going into venue hire. It's not going into any of these things. And I think that if we're okay with those kinds of things not being possible anymore, then fine. But that's not the world I really want to live in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe moving away from AI a wee
I know,
bit,
sorry, that was me. I drew us into the AI conversation.
Continuing on, like the future of creativity, what's exciting you about the future of photography and creativity?
We don't need better cameras anymore. I think that's my favorite thing. Like it's like, which is weird because I'm a nerd and I like know about a lot of this stuff, but we just don't need it. Like some of the photographers that I am currently like most enjoying are going back to all the technology and trying to find a way of bringing it forward. Like Jim, one of the reasons I look at him all the time is because he's probably the most natural example I've come across in a long time of somebody that just does his thing and kind of carried on, and it wasn't cool, and now it is. But he was doing it when it wasn't cool because it felt right. But I think that this is the thing, like we're realizing that Sony A1 II that's just come out, that's got completely silent shutter, you literally physically can't miss focus on it, but the skin tones look dead. Like maybe the solution is to go back to the one with the skin tones that don't look dead and just get good, or be okay with imperfection. Like that sounds really glib. I don't mean just like get good. It's more just, I think the signs of human imperfection in work is becoming more and more evident. And the more that we see that, the more I'm seeing the person that takes the photograph in it without it feeling like you're trying to do it through composition or by shocking somebody. It's just, you're making tasteful choices that feel like an old pair of gloves. Like you've worn them for years. You know how they fit. They are really pleasant. The leather gives in just the right way. And there's patina and all this kind of stuff. And that feeling of individual imperfection is something that I really like. So the new thing may be perfect for you. Like maybe you do need to upgrade something. That's never a bad thing, I don't think. But knowing that you don't need to and being content with the thing that you've built up to now and the way that you work is deeply underrated, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fun times. What next topic should we? I mean, we have covered a lot already. I want to talk about in fact, have we talked much about branding voice? We have a little bit. What about social media? I want to talk about that. There are a lot of different platforms right now, and I think a lot of people struggle with how many they are and where they should be. And I think a lot of people are splitting their focus and peppering all over. What's your thoughts on social media platforms, especially treating them as a portfolio, if that is the right way to approach it? And I
mean, to preface this, I don't really post on social media, but to be clear though, that is a brand decision, because I feel like there's more utility in me being quiet about the work that I'm doing and allowing you to kind of experiment in private and not going, I worked with this person last week. Look at the improvement in the photography. Because that's going to pull down somebody else that quite rightly has made these changes with advice from me and help from me. But that's their achievement. I don't want to take that. So not social media isn't going to be a primary source of income for every business, because some businesses require that your brand values stand louder than your reach. So you didn't know about me despite having met me before in this context until somebody told you about me. And that's on purpose. I want that. I don't want to be somebody that is just in every conversation. I don't want to be somebody that's pushing myself in front of you. And I think before you even talk about social media, I would think carefully about how you're acquiring clients. If you're acquiring clients through a wedding planner, maybe social media is irrelevant, but you should ask the planner. Do you know what I mean? Like, and in the end, it's how comfortable you are with your kind of effort being put into a place where it may have limited success for your audience. If you're a direct-to-consumer brand and Instagram is where you're getting your work from, keep doing what you're doing. Like, I feel like the more of you we can see in your work, the better. I think some of the people I enjoy following on Instagram the most are photographers that are not precious with attention. So they'll share work from people that inspire them outside of the wedding industry. If they're wedding photographers, like, here's this photographer that just did a commercial campaign. Isn't this image cool? Because it helps get their clients excited about being visually inspired, which again, like, leads into the target market. Therefore, I wish photographers would lean less on their own images from weddings. And I think that style shoots get a bad name. And I think for some people, it doesn't make sense. If you're a documentary photographer, you've got no business using style shoot images. I get it. Understand that. Yeah. But equally, what about you? Like, maybe your work isn't the thing that sells you. Maybe it isn't. Maybe the thing about you is that you're an amazing stylist and you know how to dress. So all of your social content could quite happily be style advice for grooms. Like, here's how to wear a suit. Here is how to dress when you've gained weight before your wedding. Like, all these things that are practically useful for your audience. And then you use your aesthetic skills to make it the level that is going to fit with your work. I feel like a lot of the time we view ourselves as just being a catalog. Like, here are the things that I sell, and not a lookbook. Here is how it feels to work with me. So this isn't a platform thing. This is just a general approach thing. Wherever you decide to put it, who am I for? What do they struggle with? How can I solve this problem for them? And if that isn't with your photography, it can be a million other things. Like, your podcast right now is a prime example of that. Like, this is not you sharing your wedding videos, but I can guarantee that a million people listening to this have got more respect for you. If people want to get more information, this is a book called The Win Without Pitching Manifesto. And it's written by a design agency owner who basically got sick of the practice of writing treatments for people, where basically you come up with a creative idea, you nearly fully realize it, and then you take it to the business and they try and pitch you against other people. And then there was a pricing conversation. And the way that he recommended you interact with any kind of like marketing effort was put your effort into places where it will raise your trust. So, can I become an expert in blank? And you have to be an expert in a part of the topic that matters to your target client. So me being an expert in photography equipment or Lightroom is not relevant to a bride or a groom or anybody that's going to commission me for photography. It shouldn't be. They shouldn't care, because if the output's right, then that's fine. But the photographers might care about that. So if I was to try and not take the approach I'm taking right now, one of the things I could do would be, here's how to do this in Lightroom. Here's how to change that. And I think that the more you can do to raise your trust level and your expertise specifically with your target audience, that's where you should put your effort. So if your audience is on LinkedIn, you don't use Instagram. If your audience is on Instagram, don't use LinkedIn. If TikTok takes you 10 times the effort and is reaching the same number of people as Instagram, well, maybe you should just use Instagram, because you're saving like 9/10 of the effort. So in the end, it's not a one size fits all. And I think that generally people have got less time for social media than they used to. It's the reason why I'm not still on Clubhouse. When Clubhouse was important, I spent my life on there, but it's not important. And it hasn't been for like, maybe a year after it was built, it was dead. But for that period of time, it was important. So I spent the time there. And I think that part of what you're going to have to deal with going forward is that nobody actually knows, because Instagram will change their mind in a week as to how things should work. So you should come up with a strategy of how you can build more trust with your target audience. And if you hold it up under that lens, like, I'm doing this thing, is it going to build more trust with my target audience? Yes, no. That's a pretty good touchstone as to whether or not it's worth your time in terms of outreach.
Yeah.
But again, I'll preface that with I'm not on social, like, or I am, but I'm not on it a lot. Like 90% of my time on Instagram is spent in DMs, like chatting to people, because that's, to me, a more valuable method. Because the other side of social is that it's people on the other end, and they might not care about what your images look like, but they might want to have a chat with you about like The Office, or like what happened on The Bear in the last season, or like Severance or something. Like, being a real human being on the other side of your business is time consuming, but it might be more valuable than posting for some people.
Yeah, I would agree. By the way, I had never heard of The One Without Pitching Manifesto. It's pretty cool. It's £25 on Amazon, but do support your local bookshops, please.
So the only thing I'll say is that the second book of that is like £300. So please don't buy that.
The second
you don't need
book.
it. It's fine. It's fine. It's one of those where an agency owner did the first thing and he took the drug dealer approach to it. Like, we'll give them the first one for free, and then when they're hooked, like,
That's
no,
crazy.
it's nuts. But the Win Without Pitching Manifesto is great. Even if you only get halfway through it, you're probably going to get most of what you need out of it.
Damn, cool. Do I have
Did you read half a book?
Do I have permission to spend one credit, Greg, on our Audible account?
Yeah.
Thanks. Wonderful, thanks. Yeah, you know what, TikTok, yeah, it's interesting because they all have their different vibes. TikTok, Instagram. I'm not that familiar with LinkedIn. And
Because
I know
our audience is
literally.
yeah. But I know Instagram did the whole Reels thing, and that's pushing them out quite heavily. But even the approach between TikTok and Instagram Reels, I feel, is different. I feel like a lot of people have running monologue thoughts that are really, really popular on TikTok. And I'm saying that understanding that the algorithm has dictated that this is the kind of stuff I'm listening to, because obviously the wrong one running thoughts. And I like to hear what people are thinking and saying. So this sends me that. So I don't really have I don't think anyone has a good overall arching, this is what is successful on TikTok. But I've noticed that those kind of like commentary, opinions, or helpful advice, or those sort of that's the sort of content that gets pushed on TikTok quite a lot, or maybe for me anyway. But
you see, for me at the moment, it's like almost exclusively like autism parenting content, because it's that thing. It's one of those situations where like, this is the other side of it, because again, we're back to black boxes again. Like, we don't know what's happening in the background, so like everything you do is guessing.
Yeah.
So if you take it from an effort approach, that I like that better, because it's inside of my control. I don't have to worry too much. But equally, like I said, I'm definitely not a marketing expert. Like, hire a social media strategist for sure.
Yeah. Websites. Do you look at websites?
I do, because I like to see, because this is me being somebody trying to get an appreciation for somebody's work. The way I look at it is that if somebody's put it on Instagram, they probably like it a bit, like a fair bit. If they put it on the website, they probably liked it a lot at whatever point they last updated the website. And I think that it kind of helps you to understand the weighting of somebody's like direction. So I'll look at, very often I'll look at website for where they were, and look at Instagram for where they're going. And then the conversation that we have together is like, well, which of those two things felt better, and like, how do we move you forward? I think that in the commercial world, people don't have sales pages on the website. It's just images. In the high-end wedding world, very few people have copy on their websites. It's almost all images.
Yeah.
So I think that when you say website, it depends on the way your business is structured. Because if you're building a sales tool for a planner to sell you, having a website that's all images and nothing else, but actually you update it all the time, well, that's amazing. Because it means that you can just be current. All you've got to do is format one correctly for your website, whatever that might look like, and push it out. The more you kind of complicate websites and make them harder to kind of update without breaking something, or add more copy, you basically have to rethink your identity as a business every time you update it. So people just don't do it. They just put it off. And I think that if you're the kind of person that already has the kind of portfolio site, well, then I can probably look at that and know that it's fairly current. Like it'll be within a year or so. But most people's like regular website landing pages, I've seen them that haven't been updated in like 5-10 years. And that's because they don't really use them. They're just there because that's what people should have. And they're a pain to update. But recently I've seen a rash of clients. Maybe it's because that's when people come to me, but that have been updating their websites at the same time as we're doing color work, for example. Like they've realized they don't like where the color was and they're doing it all at the same time. So you saying Paul might be rebranding right now. I'm not shocked at that because he booked me for a session to help move color forward. So it's part of like a wider picture for some people. And I think that more and more often we need to think about what your route to market is, and that'll decide whether the website's important.
Yeah, interesting. Because I've been going through and reusing our website, but it's funny because it was only it feels like a few weeks ago we had Luke Bell on, and his website is just images. There's not a single fucking word on his website, or on his Instagram post. He just posted images and that's it. Nothing else. And here I am going through and adding in so much more copy, and I'm getting people who listen to the podcast going, "What? Why are you doing that? If it works for
There's two things there. Like one of them is that SEO used to be a primary source of traffic for a lot of people. So if you don't have words on your website, it doesn't exist. Like it's that simple. It just doesn't. So because Google can't read it, it's invisible to Google. So like that's why people put a lot of copy on. Some products need explaining. Like you can't just say like if somebody's a content creator at a wedding, that is not something that I would just naturally understand. There's not a history of content creators. So you walking me through what that process is needs copy. It needs it. And it might need copy because you have to educate your client in some ways as part of your process. That's fine. But if there's no text on a website, it means you're only dealing with the thing you're good at. And I love that. Yeah. But it does mean your client has to know you exist already. It's like a business card and not like an article in a magazine, like an advertisement in a magazine.
Yeah. It's it's interesting. I find it. I mean, if I'm saying anything wrong here, you let me know, Tom. But obviously, our goal is to try and get as many Americans or people abroad who are eloping into Scotland or getting married into Scotland, and so they've never been in this country. Potentially, there's traditions that they don't know about, and so I feel like our website is not just about selling them on our videography offer, but it's also saying why they should trust us because they've never been here. They don't know us. This might be the first time they're hearing of us. And so I feel like there's a lot of explaining to do. And I want to make sure that their experience of not just like having an elopement is good and finding us is good, but that we look like we know what we're doing. And so here's this information that we're going to give you. Here's locations you can go to. Here's all this. And if you need like what shoes you want to wear and all that kind of stuff, that is a lot to throw at somebody.
You're not throwing it because nobody's just stumbling across your website. The people that are on your website are making a choice to be there because otherwise they'd be back on TikTok again. You know, it's like there are things that are designed to take them away from it. Like by giving people rich, deep, meaningful information, that is actually something that I'm going to be spending more time in going forward. Like if somebody asks me a question constantly, I am going to write like verbose answers to that. Here is why you should be thinking about this because it is of use to the people that I care about. Now, if, for example, things change for you and actually you decide that there are 3 wedding planners in New York, LA, and San Francisco that we really want to work with, and you change your landing page to just be those images, that kind of like stream of consciousness, here's the work we're most proud of, and you then move those other things you've written to an article section, well, you're doing both. But again, you don't have to do that right now because you're thinking, who is landing on my website? how are they getting here and what do I want them to feel? Do I want them to feel included? Do I want them to feel kind of welcome? And do I want to be, again, it's that thing of educating your client to become a trusted expert. Now, if every other elopement photographer is doing exactly the same thing, well, then that's not a competitive advantage anymore. And maybe at that point, you could maybe test like what happens if we move one way to another. But I actually think that based on what you've told me, like you're essentially doing the travel agent, wedding planning, and the photography and video, like it's everything. So by being a one-stop shop and trying to like provide for all these things, if you capture somebody and they like you, then, well, they don't have to go anywhere else. So they don't leave, they stay with you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, what time are we at?
Really? But we've taken enough of your time. So
we're over.
Talking about websites, where can people find more information about what you offer?
So my website is www.bytomw.com. So that's bytomw.com. There's lots of information on the website. So if you want to find out prices and like what I offer, there's stuff there. But really, all you should do is click any of the millions of book a consultation buttons, and we'll have a chat.
And they're free. Yeah. Do it.
Strong call to action.
Like, do it if you need help. Like, don't like it's still my calendar. You're booking up, but at the same time, like the more people I speak to, the better. Like, I love photography as an industry, and I really like what I get to do right now because it almost feels like I get to work with the absolute best people in the world and see them struggling with things and like exactly the same way that we did. All of those names in your head that you think, oh, they're amazing. I just love the fact that they're also having these kind of creative crises and working through it all. Yeah. And if I can help you with yours, that's awesome. Let me know.
Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. People can find us at Perspective by Cinemate on YouTube and Instagram. Thank you to Witchak and PickTime for sponsoring another episode of this podcast. And if you out there have liked this conversation, please do hit subscribe on our YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. However,
in the meantime,
enjoy your life.
Enjoy. That's so broad. Enjoy your life. like you see, there's one guy sat out there going, "Oh, but I'm miserable. Damn."